Part 36. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 352. Everyone was attracted by the sound just now, and they all turned their heads to look. Even Princess Wenan turned her head to look. When Lily's center of gravity was unstable and she was about to throw forward, she was originally about to rush forward in panic. She leaned to one side, but Subarong grabbed her and said anxiously, "Sister, be careful." Her voice was gentle and cute, but the hand holding Lily's arm was stiff for a moment, as if she was struggling, and finally she forced her towards her. Princess Wenan pushed forward. Ah! There was a sudden scream in the venue, and Lily threw herself into Princess Wenan's arms. This incident shocked everyone. Princess Wenan was so frightened by this shock that she was still pinching her with one hand. Holding the teacup, all the tea was poured onto Lily. The palace servant behind Princess Wenan, who was holding the candies, threw away the fruit plate in his hand and quickly went to pull Lily away. Lily couldn't care less about her own embarrassment at the moment. Her back was in burning pain, and the most important thing was the sound of gasps coming from around her. She endured the pain and quickly stepped back and fell to the ground. At this moment, even if she was embarrassed, she would never weaken, no longer let Princess Wenan make a fool of herself. "Madam, I'm sorry." Lily bit her lips, feeling a little annoyed. It was just that she didn't have any clue about this mission. Now she was actually tricked by Subarong. She had never experienced anything like this since her intelligence gradually increased. What a big loss. Leng Hu was being plotted by someone at this time. He felt indescribably aggrieved and depressed in his heart. At this moment, he wanted to strangle Subarong behind him to death. Princess Wenan had an angry look on her face, but the people who had just spoken turned around. The leader was a young man about 15 or 16 years old. He has handsome eyebrows and starry eyes. Wearing a brocade robe embroidered with dark patterns with silver thread. Wearing a jade crown, his lips opened wide after seeing the scene in front of him. "Grandma, this is..." Subarong, who looked stunned just now, quickly knelt down, took a handkerchief to wipe Lily's face, and said gently, "Is Ziahe okay? Are you scared?" In a messy scene, two girls with exactly the same appearance fell to the ground, while the other wiped her face gently and lovingly. The two teenagers who had just come out were stunned by the scene. Princess Wenan was so angry that she couldn't speak, and her face was ashen. At this moment, the corners of her mouth were pursed tightly, and her eyes seemed to be frozen. He hurriedly apologized with blessings, but in the end, the people of Genkuo Palace still asked them to find another place to rest, and the Su family's people were invited out. After this incident, the two sisters of the Su family became the laughingstock of the capital. Thinking of the way everyone looked at her when she left the Genkuo Palace, he felt depressed and panicked. After getting on the carriage, she didn't look at it and looked down. With her head bowed, Subarong seemed to be thoughtful and didn't know what she was thinking, and immediately pulled Lily into her arms. Before he could scold her for getting into trouble, he looked at the wounds on her back first. Then he took a long breath and said, "Amitabha, God bless me. Fortunately, the skin is not broken. The girl's body is the most important, so there should be no scars." After he said this, Lily couldn't help turning her head and staring at Subarong. It would be useless to mention what happened just now, but Lily couldn't swallow this breath in her heart, even if he didn't blame her. But Lily still had a gloomy face, too angry to speak. Returning to the Su mansion, he originally wanted to send her daughter back to her room in person, but for what happened today, it was obvious that she needed to report back to her mother-in-law, the real mistress of the home mansion, so after she ordered her nanny to send Lily back, he left in a soft sedan first. "So Lily, don't think that I have harmed you. I helped you with what happened today. Of course, I don't blame you if you can't understand. One day you will thank me." Subarong raised her chin and said, after saying this, a complicated look appeared on her face. She glanced at Lily, then reached out and subconsciously touched her face. Then she took a deep breath, turned around and left without looking back. She had to behave well even though she got an advantage, and she made herself embarrassed in public. At this moment, in Suberong's eyes, she actually helped herself. Lily laughed angrily. In that case, I would like to thank you. After doing so many missions, it is not impossible that she has been plotted by others. But now she was plotted by a girl who was only 12 years old, and she was also an ancient person. Lily also felt a little frustrated. Seeing how many steps she had taken, Suberong paused and turned around. The face that was somewhat similar to hers still had a bit of coldness and determination. You don't have to thank me, I just want to do something. After she said this, she paused. If you are smart, you can learn the rules well. I will find a good marriage for you in the future and ensure that you have no worries about food and clothing for the rest of your life. Lily couldn't listen to her words anymore, so she turned around and left in disgust. When he came to see her that night, her expression was very ugly. She didn't even mention Suberong. She just stroked Lily's hair over and over again until she coaxed Lily to sleep. Then He stood up and left. The next day, the news that Suberong was banned from the courtyard spread almost throughout the Su mansion. Lily, who had made a fool of herself yesterday, was not punished. On the contrary, Suberong seemed to have been forgotten in the mansion, except for the monthly appointment. Her salary was sent outside her courtyard, and her courtyard was sealed off. The He family did not need her to pay her respects. Even young Ulhoshiza did not mention this daughter again. 3 years passed like this. This mission is confusing. After Lily's analysis, she feels that there are only 2 clues at most. Firstly, in the plot, Lily Su and Lu Minjiao, the sister-in-law, have a close relationship. This may be an entry point for the plot. Secondly, the original owner I don't like Suberong, but the weird thing is that Suberong originally died in the plot, but she survived in this life. If the original owner died when she was unwilling to regret it, then it means that the mission should have nothing to do with her. Big, but every time I think of Suberong, I don't know if it's the emotions left by the original owner, or because Lily herself suffered a loss from Suberong. So every time she thinks of Suberong, Lily feels a little stuffed in the chest. The feeling is very wonderful, as if she being able to truly become the original owner and experience the twin-spirited connection between Subei's body and Suberong. Sometimes she seemed to vaguely guess Suberong's thoughts, and Suberong seemed to understand herself very well. This strange feeling Lily was a little unhappy. Suberong has not stepped out of her courtyard in 3 years. This situation is somewhat similar to Subei's misfortune and situation in the plot. Lily sometimes feels that Suberong is like another Subei in the plot. She is the people of the Su mansion forgot about it and was consciously put under house arrest by the He family. The He family has not mentioned this daughter so far, as if she has forgotten that she had given birth to this daughter. Subei's birthday will be in half a year. It will be almost as long as the new year is over. It will be her 16th birthday then, which happens to be on the day of the Lantern Festival. He has recently been worried about his daughter and hairpin. She couldn't sleep for several days and nights. Ever since Lily made a fool of herself at the Genkuo Palace, people have been coming to propose marriage. It's just on the surface, Lily's reputation has been ruined now, and there are very few well-matched people who are willing to marry her. The He family never thought of marrying her daughter to a wealthy family at first, but she was afraid that her uncle's family would be wealthy, so Lily married her. In the past, she would have been bullied, but now that there was no match for her, and the people who came to propose marriage were of poor character and appearance, he couldn't help but become a little anxious. When Lily went to He's courtyard at noon, she heard he sobbing. The girl who was holding the curtain for her couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when she saw Lily coming. After seeing Lily, He's eyes couldn't help but light up. Here is here. When did you get up? Are you feeling better? After the inexplicable severe pain in Lily's head after entering the mission a few years ago, she was left with the root cause of frequent dizziness. She went to the doctor to see her and took medicine. Although he ate it, it didn't work. Some doctors said it was a blood loss syndrome. He had been recuperating Lily's body over the years, and even nursed one of his daughters back to a rosy complexion, but the dizziness could never be eradicated. Therefore, whenever he saw Lily having a severe headache, he couldn't help but gnashed his teeth and cursed every time. It's better. Didn't Mom sleep well last night? Mr. He was very considerate to Lily. Even her two sons couldn't compare to Lily's status in her heart. Lily was naturally docile and well behaved to Mr. He, which made Mr. He even more. He loved her so much that when she opened her mouth, he couldn't help but said, "I don't know what evil our Suk family has done. We brought such a devil back and harmed you to this point. In a few days, we will see it's your birthday, and my mother wants to take you to Puring Temple to ask for incense to get rid of the bad luck on your body, and also to pray for your marriage." The Puling Temple mentioned by the He family is a very famous Hyogyo temple throughout the Daki dynasty. The incense is very prosperous. It is said that the Bodhisattva is also very efficacious. In the plot, Subeihi met Lu Yuanshao after going to Puling Temple. The acquaintance, and eventually love, made Lu Yuanshao only want one person, and they would never be separated from each other for the rest of his life, and he never took a concubine in his life. At first, Lily just regarded this mission as the simplest and most ordinary one, and didn't think too much about it. Although the gift of Suberong ruined the good opportunity of marriage with this body in recent years, she never thought about it. Married, so in fact, what she cared about was being plotted by Suberong, and she didn't really take it to heart. But now seeing his anxious and worried look for her, Lily was stunned for a moment, and her brows couldn't help but frown. Got up. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 353. She has lived in this plot for several years, but she still has no idea what the mission is. She does not want to marry Lu Yuanshao like the original owner and live such a happy life. Even if it is Lu Yuanshao at present, Xiao seems to be a good match, but this is just a task. Apart from the He family, she has not invested any emotions here. Lu Yuanshao's excellence has nothing to do with her. Naturally, if he is bad, it has nothing to do with her. Relation. The incense in Puling Temple is very prosperous, and the Master Suanji inside is very famous. I hope you can let him look at it for you. It would be great if you can get a mantra from the Master. He said Amitba in his mouth. When Lily heard the name Suanji, her heart moved again. Master Suanji was originally a very famous figure in the plot. He was the previous abbot of Puling Temple. Later, he was just decentralized and retired. He was personally granted by the late emperor. The most important thing is that Subeihi and Lu Yuanshao know each other in the plot because of this person, because this person is Subeihi's friend who has known each other for 2 years. They kept in touch with each other and often talked about the Dharma. They were very close to each other. When Lily thought about this, she discovered a very strange problem. Apart from the gorgeous clothes and competing with Suberong, what Lily so loved since childhood was that she had never read any scriptures or learned any Buddhism. It wasn't until she was 12 years old that she seemed to have a great enlightenment all of a sudden. Not only was she very familiar with Buddhism at her fingertips, but she also understood some of the Buddhism as well as Master Suanji. She often slipped out of the house and went to Puring in disguise. Temple, because she was not noticed in the mansion. So she left the house. So for 2 years. No one knew. 12 years old is a very critical point. It seems that Lily Su has grown up all of a sudden. Could it be because of Suberong's death and the neglect of the Su family that this girl suddenly realized from the pain? But her instinctive sixth sense told Lily that it was not such a problem. She took a deep breath and suppressed the doubts in her heart. On the other side, the He family arranged for someone to prepare the carriage. While holding Lily's hand, she earnestly warned, "I only hope that the Buddha will appear and know that you are a good boy who should not be harmed. If he can give you a good marriage, my mother will be satisfied for the rest of her life." His tone was gentle and his expression was loving, which made Lily feel a little sad. After experiencing so many missions, Lily's heart should have been as cold as iron, but when she saw he like this, Lily still found it hard to be cruel and said that she didn't want to get married, so her lips moved. She said no more. As the carriage drove all the way towards Puring Temple, he whispered to her daughter about the origin of Puring Temple. She was afraid that her daughter would contradict some enlightened monk because of her ignorance. Lily also understood that at this moment, sitting outside his wet nurse suddenly let out a sound, and the carriage suddenly slid for a while. When Lily and her daughter were shaken around in the carriage, he held on to her hair, which was shaken a little loosely. "On the temples," he said angrily, "what happened?" "I'm going back to you, madam." It just so happened that the prince of the Genkuo palace also came to offer incense, and the princess's guard of honor was also there. The nanny's voice came in a panic. After being speechless for a while, she braved her courage and hesitated. "Young madam, I seem to have vaguely seen a silhouette, which looks somewhat similar to the older girl." In the car, his expression changed slightly when she first heard about the Duke's mansion. Then, when she heard the words eldest girl, her face instantly turned livid. At this moment, he could no longer care about the curtains of the carriage when she was outside. It was a rule to pull up, so she directly pulled up the curtain in the carriage. There was a sea of people outside. Because it was the Lantern Festival today, there were a lot of people going out. Many people liked to go outside the capital. Hyogyo Temple today, if it weren't for the fact that many dignitaries would show up, the monks in the temple would have cleared the place and come out, and the people from the Genkuo Palace would show up to guard the place with troops, otherwise the He family would probably be hit. "Did you really see it clearly?" His teeth clenched and he clenched his fists. "Is she really so restless?" The wet nurse could hear the suppressed anger in his words, and said timidly, "Maybe I am blind and saw it wrong." The Su mansion's carriage was driven aside, and the carriage from the Genkuo mansion passed first. His face turned green and white at this moment. From time to time, he stretched out his hand to open the curtain and looked outside. There was a huge sea of people outside, and he couldn't see anything. Suberong looked sideways, but she was still unwilling to give in. From time to time, she lifted a corner of the curtain, her expression becoming more and more cold. When Lily heard that Suberong appeared in Hyogyo Temple, a bitter smile appeared on the corner of Lily's mouth. She lowered her head to hide the surging emotions in her eyes. At this time, things had developed to such a point that it was completely different from the plot. Suberong, who was supposed to be dead, suddenly woke up. She was supposed to have been left out for several years. However, Subehi was not neglected and alienated by the He family. On the contrary, she was loved and loved. Logically speaking, in the plot, the He family was very cold and resentful towards Subehi because of Suberong's death. The Su family should prefer Suberong as the eldest daughter. But Suberong was not pampered by the Su family after she came back to life, and her life in the Su family these years was even worse than that of a concubine. This situation is strangely similar to Subehi in the plot, with his gradually changing character and calm appearance. In addition, on the Lantern Festival, Subehi met Lu Yuanshao, the prince of Genkuo Gong, at the Hyogyo Temple. If the same Lily at the beginning could be explained by other reasons, but now there were too many similar scenes, and she couldn't help but doubt it. She suspected that Suberong might have stolen Subehi's life in the plot. What's more, she also began to doubt Suberong's identity. Did other missionaries come here to fulfill her wish because they received the mission that Suberong was unwilling to accept after her early death in the plot? Or is it possible that Lily Su in the plot actually lived a complete life in her place? What kind of existence is Su Barong who even survived inexplicably? The more Lily thought about it now, the more cold sweat slowly started to break out on her back. Each mission was more difficult than the last. At this moment, a loophole in the plot was found, but Lily still couldn't figure out what the original owner's wish was. Seeing that several years have passed, if she still cannot find the answer in just a few decades, will she fail this mission? Lily took a deep breath. Her expression was a little pale, but she forced herself to calm down. She would never panic unless it was absolutely necessary, not to mention whether what Su Barong was living now was the second half of Su Beihi's life in the plot. It is known that Lily will confirm this only after the Lu family is sure to come to pay the betrothal gift. In Hyogyo Temple, Mr. He absent-mindedly lit incense, pulled Lily, and donated money for sesame oil. He originally proposed to see Master Suanji, but got the news that Master Suanji was meeting a close friend at this moment. "I don't have time to see anyone." If Mrs. He had been extremely disappointed before, now she might have been distracted because Su Barong left the house. So after getting the answer, she just smiled reluctantly and asked the monk for a side room. Then with a cold face, people began to quietly inquire around the temple. Thinking of how Lily Su and Lu Yuanxiao met and got to know each other in the plot, Lily hesitated and confessed to Mr. He. She only said that she wanted to walk around in the temple. Mr. He originally didn't want to let her go, but at this moment, she was worried that Su Barong would get into trouble outside. She was so anxious that she couldn't bear to refuse her daughter's request. She only told her not to go too far. After all, there were many people offering incense today, and she was afraid that she would be bumped into, so she asked her not to go out. After entering the gate of Puring Temple, he agreed. Aunt Zhu followed Lily as promised by the He family. Lily thought of the residence of Master Suanji in the plot. She pretended to turn in that direction inadvertently, passing through the dense woods, and in front of the lotus pond, a year old the old monk was saying goodbye to a petite figure dressed in men's clothing with his back to everyone. It was always a bit immoral to eavesdrop on people's conversations. Aunt Zhu pulled Lily and gestured to the Spring Festival Gala and other girls, and they hid in behind the trees. Lily had just hid her body, but there were footsteps coming from the other direction. Through the treetops, Lily saw that the leader was none other than Princess Wenan, whom she had not seen for several years, leading the Prince of Genkuo Palace. In the plot, Lu Yuanxiao, the original owner's gentle, considerate, and caring husband, came in a large number of people. Such a scene should have happened in the original plot, but it happened to Su Barong at this time. A very quick thought flashed through Lily's mind. She was not interested in looking at the picture that had not been turned yet. After the face that came over confirmed his suspicion, he gestured to Nanny Zhu and others and quietly retreated. When walking, Lily was naturally afraid of something like stepping on the treetops and making a sound, so she was very careful. Until she was far away from this place, Lily couldn't help but pursed her lips, and her eyes were calm. She was a little panicked at first, but now that she was sure that Su Barong had a problem, she calmed down. It would have been better if she had known about it earlier. Su Barong might have lived the life of Su Barong in the plot, but the problem was that Su Barong, if Lily Su's life is robbed, and if Lily Su hates her because of it, then Lily Su's life like this in the plot has already been passed. What is it that she is not willing to accept in the middle? Although another problem has arisen without being resolved, fortunately, knowing one more thing is not harmful to her. Lily sighed silently and decided that she should keep an eye on Su Barong more in the future. Maybe she might have clues about her mission. It may appear in Su Barong. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 354. The figure just now really looks like the second girl, Chun Zioxin said bluntly, and everyone was a little silent. Although the figure was wearing a coarse blue outfit, she was somewhat similar to Lily in terms of stature and height. Aunt Zhu thought of the previous when he sent someone to inquire about a certain person's whereabouts. He lowered his head. After getting her affirmative answer, Lily naturally had no intention of staying any longer. When she returned to the wing, she had a gloomy face, obviously feeling anxious because she had not found Suberong's whereabouts. When she saw Lily coming back at this time, he was obviously very satisfied. "My son, why are you so well behaved and come back so early?" Lily just smiled and said nothing. He didn't mean to ask her daughter to say more. She reached out and touched her wrist. After sitting for a while, when the people sent out came back one after another, Mr. He did not wait any longer, and stood up directly to greet everyone in the family to go to Princess Wenan of the Genkuo Palace to pay her respects, but in the end she was rejected by the people around Princess Wenan, and Mr. He also, don't worry, he took Lily back to Su's house. The first thing he did when she got home was to invite Suberong out. At this moment, Suberong was in Puring Temple. How could she invite Suberong out if she was not in the mansion? The maid in her room was pretending to be she was lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. When the people sent by the He family dragged her out, the girl almost went crazy with fear. The He family had the girl beat up and finally heard the girl confess. During the time, Suberong was nominally introspecting, but in fact, she always went out at intervals every month. People in the mansion ignored her very much, so no one noticed this. When the He family knew the news, almost not mad. Our ladies dare to do such inappropriate things when they are not married. She had people lock up the Su family tightly. She was also afraid that Lily would see this embarrassing scene, so she sent Lily back to her room. The next day, Lily heard that Suberong had come back and was called into the main room by He. When she came out, everyone saw Su. The eldest girl in the family was wearing men's clothes, her hair was messy, and her face was red and swollen after being beaten by He. Early this morning, the young lady asked someone to take the chunmia next to the eldest girl and sell it. When Chunxiao was combing Lily's hair, she was still worried that chunmia would be sold. The consequences in the future can be imagined to be very bleak. When talking about this, the faces of the servants in the Lily house showed panic and uneasiness. When I went to pay my respects to Mr. He, I entered the courtyard of Mr. He. Suberong was kneeling there with a pale face in the corridor. There were frost crystals on her forehead and eyebrow corners, and her lips were a little pale. Her face was pale, but her eyes looked very black. She looked like she had been there all night. He looked not asleep, but the servants in the house looked unsurprised. When Lily was stunned, Suberong saw that her originally dull expression changed. Suddenly the corners of his mouth curled up, his smile revealed a bit of bitterness and complexity, and his eyes were full of struggle. "Lily Su, Lily Su." She seemed to be talking to herself, or as if she was confirming something. After a long while, she lowered her head and stopped talking. Because Lily had doubts about her, she looked at her very carefully now, but Suberong had hurt her once, but strangely, she didn't mean to hurt her at all. Lily had done so many tasks, and it felt so strange. She is very sensitive, but she has never felt any malice in her body. This kind of situation has never happened to Lily since she did the mission. She knows that she has a problem now, but she doesn't seem to hate herself. It really makes Lily somewhat helpless about this. If you want to expose her flaws, you must first make her crazy. Only by knowing what she cares about most can you prescribe the right medicine. However, Suberong does not harm her and does not hate her. It seems that she has no intention of killing her. It seems her eyes were very complicated, with a bit of incomprehensible look that made Lily's hair stand on end. From his mouth, he knew that Suberong had indeed gone to the temple. She had slipped out of the Su mansion from time to time in the past few years and often went to Puling Temple. When Su Barong came to pay homage to he this morning, he made her kneel outside the door in anger. Su Barong went to he's courtyard for several days, but he didn't see her face. Every day, Su Barong had to kneel down until almost noon before letting the girl help her leave. Maybe it was because of Su Barong's death in the past 2 days. As a matter of fact, he put Lily's marriage on hold for a while. When she left after lunch at Mr. He's place at noon, Lily's things were forgotten at Mr. He's place. 2 girls turned around to get them for her. Zhu grandma was getting older, and she was walking behind with a hand warmer that had cooled down, about 7 or 8 steps away from the Lily. When she turned around a peach forest, at the pond in front of her, a soft voice seemed to say, "Please worry, it's getting better." Before she could finish her words, she seemed to hear the footsteps behind her. The sound suddenly stopped, and a figure flew past. It looked like a man. He was sitting on the stone table behind the peach blossom tree. Su Barong, who was in front of her, had just put down her skirt, with a blush that had not yet faded. When she saw Lily, her expression was stunned, and she pursed her lips. "I have something to talk to you alone." When Aunt Zhu at the back heard this, she lowered her head and retreated. Lily's face turned cold, but Su Barong stood up, holding a porcelain bottle in her hand. "Whether you believe it or not, I have no intention of harming you. On the contrary, I will protect you and choose a suitable husband for you, as long as you listen to my arrangements." Lily heard her words and looked at the serious look on her face, and suddenly her heart moved. "You ruined my reputation like that, but you didn't mean to harm me? Do you think I will believe you? Idiot! I was doing it for your own good, otherwise." Su Barong's face showed a sarcastic look, and finally she waved her hand as if she had remembered something. "You don't have to worry about it, I have my own plans in my heart, and I won't harm you anyway. You'd better keep what happened just now in your heart and don't tell it." After she said this, she turned around and left. Half a month later, news came that the Duke of Genkuo came to propose marriage to Miss Su. Due to the power of the Genkuo Duke's office, he suppressed the anger in her heart and agreed to the marriage. Because Su Barong was not young, the marriage was scheduled for 6 months later. This half-year period was a bit too crowded. But she married Su Barong with a kind of frame-up mentality. At this point in the plot, the story has changed. The one who was supposed to marry into the Liu family changed from Su Beihe to Su Barong. 2 months later, Su Barong was still like Su Beihe in the plot. She quickly became pregnant and established a firm foothold in the Liu family. When the news of her pregnancy came back to the Su family, they sent a nanny to pick up Beihe and go to the Liu family to accompany her. She half a day. He was a little reluctant at first. Although she had 2 children, the most precious one was her little daughter. However, the nanny sent by Su Barong was originally Princess Wenan's favorite, but she was not allowed to do so because she was pregnant. He couldn't resist following her to wait on her, so he had to call Lily out and followed her to Liu's house. When she came to Liu's house again, I don't know whether it was because of Su Barong's relationship or whether it was a few years ago. No one mentioned Lily's fall on Princess Wenan anymore. Su Barong, who seemed to have changed after getting married, received her. Su Barong now looked a bit graceful and luxurious, instead of the gloomy look she had at Su's house. "I haven't seen my sister for a long time. I miss you very much. Now I've sent someone to invite you here. You won't blame me, right?" Su Barong asked someone to bring Lily tea. When Lily took a sip, she stood up and smiled. "It's a crisp autumn day now, and it's very hot inside the house. You sit down for a while, and I'll change my clothes and come out. You can accompany me for a walk outside." Su Barong and Lily were not very close at first, but now they are rarely so attentive. Lily pursed her lips and smiled. After seeing her go out, Aunt Zhu took out a handkerchief and wiped her sweat. Is the girl too hot? The scent of the handkerchief was alluring. Lily felt dizzy from the smell. She turned her face away and subconsciously avoided Aunt Zhu's hand. Aunt Zhu was stunned for a moment and then took the handkerchief back. Standing close to Lily, the cloying fragrance going straight into her nostrils. Soon Suberong seemed to have changed her clothes and came in. Someone pulled Lily and stood up. Lu Mansion was beautiful everywhere. When she walked to a pavilion, melodious music came from inside. There was a sarcastic look in Lily's eyes. Suberong turned around to look. He glanced at Lily and said, "There's someone playing the piano up front, why don't we go in and have a look?" At this moment, Lily's mouth was dry and her head was feeling dizzy. If she said that she didn't know that she had been tricked by Suberong, it would be a lie. She silently used her remaining internal energy, her eyes became clearer, and she forced herself to resisting the urge to turn around to look at Nanizu. She looked at Suberong and smiled. "What are you thinking about? Let's stop talking secretly in front of us." Princess Wenan in the Lu Mansion had two legitimate sons. In addition to the eldest son inheriting the title, the second son was proficient in all kinds of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting in his early years. With his handsome and elegant appearance, he was regarded as a man that everyone wanted to marry among the girls in the capital. Princess Wenan married the eldest daughter of Mr. Zhang from the Chaozhong Pavilion in place of the second son. After the couple got married, he was considered a good man. Their love did not last long. Less than half a year after their marriage, the carriage was frightened when they were going out. Zhang died on the spot. Although the second son of Princess Wenan survived, he was left with a disability in his legs. Since then, he has not been able to walk very smoothly. He has not been an official, and naturally he has not made any public appearances. Calculating the time, it has been nearly 20 years now. In the plot, Subeihi married into the Lu family. Lily is naturally aware of these circumstances. At this moment, someone is playing the piano in the pavilion. The Lu family dares to play the piano here, except for who else could be Princess Wenan's legitimate second son? Since you know, I won't coax you anymore. The two of us are in tune with each other. I know very well what you are thinking. I know better than you, Suberong emphasized, and the smile on her face disappeared for a moment. Cleanly, he waved his hand to signal everyone to stand farther away, and leaned towards Lily. My parents have pampered you since you were a child. You have never suffered any suffering in the world, but you suffered such humiliation a few years ago. You only want to marry a high-ranking disciple has proven his ability, right? To be continued. P.S. The fourth update about vomiting blood. Thanks to Instant Kill Potato, dear He's By who gave the reward. Please provide more updates for He's By. The belated fourth update, dear friends, please forgive me. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 355. But it's not easy to marry from a high family. It's sad. You will regret it if you suffer in the future. I said I won't harm you. The second master of the Lu family can be said to be very outstanding in literary and calligraphy. He is older, but there is no one around him. If you don't have a real wife, you have to live with a girl, and you will be the main wife after you marry. Suberong opened and closed her lips. She didn't know whether her words were trying to convince herself or Lily. Although Lily had never thought about marrying anyone, and Suberong's statement that she wanted to marry a high-ranking man to prove her ability was even more unreasonable, but this idea was very possible based on the character of the original owner. She seemed to have some thoughts from Suberong's words that flashed through her mind very quickly. Without catching it for a moment, Suberong said again. Although your status is inferior and your reputation is at a loss, as long as you and the second master achieve good things, even if you have a bad reputation in the future, you can live behind closed doors. The second master has a gentle temperament and will definitely treat you well throughout his life. In this way, I can be considered worthy of you. Myself. You really speak better than you sing. Lily's heart was filled with anger. At this moment, a surge of anger rose from her lower abdomen. She managed to suppress it with her inner strength, but her expression did not look good. Marry yourself to a young and handsome man. Husband, you come here to plan on me marrying someone who is over 50 years old, not to mention that she is not the real Lily Su. It is impossible to be moved by Suberong's few words. Even if she is the real Lily Su, it is absolutely impossible. No matter how good Mr. Louis R is to agree to Suberong's ridiculous conditions, if he has a disabled leg, people of his equal status will look down on him, including Princess Wenan, who is worse than him and himself. What's more, he will look down upon him. Well, I am older after all. Let a young girl marry a man who is older than her father. First, it insulted Lily Su's origin. After all, she was a direct descendant of the Marquis, but she was treated as a concubine by Suberong. Secondly, Suberong's tongue was like a lotus flower and she could talk to Subehi. In the future, Mr. Louis R is so old that if he lets go and goes back, he will have to carry a name on his back. He was a widow, but Suberong could not figure it out. What's more, Suberong's move was too insidious if she wanted to make rice with the second master before marriage. From now on, Lily Su's reputation will be ruined. Where will she be able to meet people in her life? If it weren't for the fact that Suberong was already dead in the plot, Lily would have thought of stabbing her to death as a mission target. Suberong looked stern when she was told that. After a long while, she sneered, "I'm doing it for your own good, but you don't know what's good. But I don't need your gratitude. I just want a clear conscience." After saying this, she stretched out her hand. He took Lily's hand and put it between his arms, dragging her towards the pavilion. "I am doing it for your own good, you just need to remember that. If you obey, you will naturally suffer less. If you resist, you will only suffer. Yourself, your parents." Before she finished speaking, Lily's heart moved, and she pretended to be overwhelmed by the medicine, and grabbed Suberong with her back hand. "You are not doing it for my own good, it is obviously for yourself, right? I have been fighting with you since I was a child, so you don't like it? Me, you want to get rid of me? You're talking nonsense." When Suberong heard this, she almost jumped up like a cat whose tail was stepped on. "You and I are." After saying this, Suberong seemed to understand something in an instant. She bit her lip and shook her head. "I would never harm you in the first place. If you don't believe it, then forget it. It's not easy to marry into a wealthy family." "I never thought about marrying a wealthy family. Why do you make the decision for me?" Seeing the anxious look on Suberong's face, Lily said deliberately, "You are just doing it for yourself, marrying Lushaiza yourself, we two sisters, but I married his uncle. What will others think of me in the future?" When Suberong heard Lily's words, she couldn't help but sneered. "You don't want to marry a rich family. You can hide it from others, but you can hide it from me? Back then She seemed to blurt out something, but she was in time. He held it back again, bit his lips tightly, and sneered twice. "I know very well what you are thinking in your heart. You can hide it from others, but you can never hide it from me. What happened today, it doesn't matter if you want to, or if you don't want to. In short, I have made up my mind." At this moment, Lily saw that she couldn't get anything out even if she tried again, so she freed her arm, slapped Suberong without thinking, and slapped Suberong's head with a snap sound. He turned aside, his body tilted, and he fell heavily on the white marble stone railing next to him. His face turned pale for a moment, and he stared at Lily with a stern expression. Shameless! Everyone behind them screamed, and each stepped forward to help Suberong. When Suberong was picked up limply, the hem of her skirt was already soaked in blood. The music in the pavilion suddenly stopped. Taking advantage of the chaos, Lily turned around and ran away. Subarong did such a shameless thing. Even if the people of the Lu family were angry, they would never dare to speak out. Lily's internal strength could hardly be suppressed. While the medicine was in his body, a man in his 50s stood up in the pavilion and called over. Seeing Lily running faster without looking back, he smiled bitterly and did not dare to open his mouth. Subarong was carried back. Everyone was anxious to call the doctor. Nanny Zhu stood on tiptoes and looked in the direction of Subarong. Except for Chun Xiao, who had no time to speak, no one noticed Lily, who was running along the pond at this moment. Anger welled up in her heart. Lily gritted her teeth and saw the lotus pond on the side. At this time, most of the autumn lotus flowers had faded. Her appearance was reflected in the clear lake water. Lily was about to forcefully climb over the railing and scoop up the water. While splashing in the face, a somewhat cold male voice sounded. "Careful." She didn't know what kind of medicine Subarong had given her. When Lily's hand was caught, she felt that the uncomfortable heat all over her body seemed to have calmed down a lot in an instant. Her body, which was about to climb over the stone fence, was pulled back. "Damn it!" She walked into the arms of a thin and strong man, with one arm still half circled around her waist. After she stood firm and before she had time to move away, Lily subconsciously rubbed her face against his chest. The man was dumbfounded for a while, and after a while he pulled Lily's hand away with a dull look on his face. As if he was afraid that Lily would do what he did just now, he pulled the jade pendant hanging around his waist and channeled his inner strength into his hand, and pulled Lily's hand away. He threw it into the lake, causing a splash of water. He reached out and waved his sleeves, and half of his sleeves were wet. He threw it over Lily's face, and Lily gasped, only to hear that he was a little cold. The voice said, "Are you feeling better?" She was indeed much more awake than before. As soon as Lily calmed down, she pulled off the sleeves covering her face and twitched the corners of her mouth. Much better. She saw the man's face clearly. He had a face with deep features. He was wearing a purple wide-sleeved robe and a jade gold crown. His eyebrows were thick and seemed to fly into his temples. His chin was slightly tapered, but he had a pair of eyes. But it was all cold inside, so the coldness of his temperament melted away the delicacy brought about by his overly delicate eyebrows. Lily should have never seen him in the plot. "Thank you." Lily nodded to him. The strange young man hesitated for a moment before letting go of his hand around Lily's waist. He nodded to her, took a few steps back and looked at her. At one glance, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up, like ice and snow melting for the first time. At that moment, Lily felt a little familiar. He glanced at Lily and said, "I took the wrong medicine." Lily immediately felt something was wrong with the handkerchief that Aunt Zhu used to wipe her sweat. The tea Subarong gave her to drink didn't know what it was made from. The fragrance was fragrant. Lily originally wanted to see what she had in mind, so she pretended to take a sip. Although she felt a little uncomfortable at the moment, she did not lose her mind. Although she had not practiced martial arts much in the past 2 years under the protection of the maids and mothers-in-law, the Nine Yang manual was still more or less after developing some internal strength. It is not difficult to suppress this thing. Now that he knew Subarong's purpose, and what she almost blurted out, an idea came to Lily's mind, but she didn't have any real evidence, so she didn't dare to make a real judgment. "Well, thank you for saving me. I'm feeling much better now." Lily wiped her face, which was still dripping with water. It wasn't very serious at first, but now she was a little more awake after being splashed with cold water. The man he looked at Lily with a deep look, then nodded, turned around and left without saying anything more, but turned his head again before leaving, and pursed the corners of his mouth. Chun Xiao and others chased after her. They heard that Subarong had just been pushed by her, and she seemed to be pregnant. At this moment, the palace doctor was summoned to the palace. He didn't care about her, and quickly called for a sedan to prepare for herself. Go back to Sue's house. Aunt Sue was nowhere to be seen at first, but she didn't come out until Lily was about to leave. She looked like she wanted to persuade Lily to stay a little longer, but when she saw Lily's gloomy face, she didn't dare to say more. Said, in the carriage, Nanny Sue was trembling and knelt in front of Lily. The veil in her arms had been touched and disappeared. Now under Lily's eyes, she just kept saying, "Miss, she will never harm the second girl." It was just such a sentence that came and went. No matter how much renbei he asked, she would not say it. Whether in the plot or in the memory of the original owner before she was 12 years old, Aunt Sue treated her as if she were her own child. After she was 12 years old, she also took great care of Lily. It can be said that except for Aunt Sue, he is the one who takes the best care of Lily, yet such a person would betray him for Subarong. Subarong is indeed very ruthless. Back at the house, Lily thought of the mysterious man she met in Liu's house. She originally wanted to find out his identity. The man gave her a very familiar feeling, as if she had seen it somewhere before. Lily would now she had no clue about her son's mission, and she would not let it go even if there was a hint of familiarity. However, before she could find anyone to inquire about it, the news of Subarong's miscarriage came back to the He family. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 356. Originally, Subarong's marriage into the Liu family was considered a high-class marriage. Now she was so lucky that she got pregnant within a few months of getting married. Unfortunately, this good fortune was lost during the wedding period. There was no news from the Liu family. After all, what Subarong did back then was not very honorable. Even if Lily pushed her down and caused her to have fetal contractions, the Liu family still had to swallow this bitter pill. He was quite calm about the fact that Subarong had lost her child. Apart from sending someone a gift list to prevent people from talking about it, He didn't even go to see her in person. Naturally, there was a lot of criticism in the capital. After Subarong got married, the He family started to get busy with Lily's marriage again. Now her daughter is already old, and she will become an old girl if she delays her age for a long time. In such a family, if you delay your age for a long time, you will be criticized easily. Therefore, when the old princess of Jingyang in the capital brought her only son to the capital to meet the saint, and invited all the female relatives in the capital to go there, he also took Lily there. In fact, the current situation of being unable to get married is something that suits Lily's heart. Now she has a rough idea of the task, but she is not completely sure yet. But seeing his lips burning with worry for her daughter, Lily refused. I can't even say anything. Her original body had been suffering from dizziness since she entered the mission that day. As soon as her mission was completed, it might be the time for her to leave the plot. Although she couldn't bear to see He sad, she didn't want to really get married in the plot. When they arrived at the Jingyang prince's mansion, the people from the Zhenqiu Duke's palace had already arrived. As a relative, it was fine not to know that the people from the Zhenqiu Duke's palace were coming, but now they already knew about it. Naturally, he had to lead Lily to say hello. Princess Wenan and her daughter-in-law were surrounded by a group of women. Subarong, who hadn't seen her for a while, was so thin that she almost lost her shape. Without the confidence she had in the past, she now looked like a withered rose, standing quietly behind Princess Wenan, like a frustrated daughter-in-law. Seemingly noticing the way Lily was looking at her, she raised her head, her eyes as calm as a pool of stagnant water, her eyes so dark that they were so bright, her face was pale and without a trace of blood. Even though her lips were rouged, they still looked very strange. She suddenly grinned at Lily, with an unspeakable irony and desolation in her smile. However, he didn't even look at her and greeted Princess Wenan. Maybe it was because of Subarong's miscarriage. The two families had become in-laws, but now they were becoming enemies. Mrs. He was relieved. At that time, Princess Wenan called out after a long time, and Mr. He also pretended not to know Princess Wenan's displeasure. After saying goodbye, he took his daughter and left. Before sitting down, Lily took Chunxiao to the toilet. When she came out, Chunxiao was supposed to be outside the path. But there was no shadow of spring dawn under the blooming wintersweet tree at this moment. Instead, Suberong, wearing a Xiangfei-colored skirt, stood under the clusters of blooming wintersweet flowers, folding a wintersweet in her hand. Play around. Sister is coming out. When she saw Lily, she seemed to have forgotten her previous plan to plot against Lily, and seemed to have forgotten that she had lost a child because of Lily. She smiled so hard that she couldn't contain the tiredness in her eyes. Suberong, Lily glanced around, and couldn't help but smile when she saw no one, and walked towards Suberong. Although she didn't spend much time practicing the Nine Yang manual, her health was always better than Suberong's. Although Suberong still didn't find any anger or hatred in her body at this moment, and it didn't look like she wanted to get angry and hurt her, but even if she was resentful, Lily was not afraid of her. Mother Zhu's family, did you sell them out? Suberong stretched out her hand to block Lily's way. After seeing her quickly take a few steps back, her lips moved. She has nursed me and you since childhood. Nanny, how can you bear it? You must find her back. Is this why you came to me? Lily wiped her hands with the handkerchief in her sleeves. Thinking of Anzu, she was still a little angry in her heart. She felt like she was angry after being betrayed. You know what she did for you. She's doing it for your own good. Suberong couldn't help shouting out in anxiety, and said loudly, you can't do this, it will chill her heart, and you will regret it. You were the one who hurt her, not me. How come she never thought of chilling my heart from the time she worked for you? Lily's heart moved, and her tone slowly became sharper. Her aggressive and cold attitude, Suberong gritted her teeth and clenched her hands tightly. Lily Su, Suberong said, tears welling up all of a sudden. There was indescribable panic and pain in her tone, as well as a hint of complexity and indescribable discomfort. Lily seemed his heart also felt a little painful, and his face suddenly turned pale. I really regret it. I have already said that I will not harm you, why can't you believe me? Suberong burst into tears, watching such a person who looked exactly like herself crying in front of her, as if Lily felt this was just like another me crying. There was something I didn't understand in my heart, but suddenly I realized it because of this feeling. The fog that had been plaguing Lily for a moment seemed to be lifted away, revealing what she had been thinking hidden under the fog for a long time. Lily's heartbeat was beating like a drum, and she even felt that her throat was a little dry. Some of her past guesses, some of which were unreliable, now seemed to be somewhat reasonable because of her sudden conjecture. She subconsciously said, because I am you, or you me. Her careless words made Suberong shed more tears. The wintersweet branch she broke in her hand was almost broken by her. She was crying so hard that she couldn't breathe. It seemed that she had been hiding in her heart for a long time. The grievances all reached the point of venting in an instant. Tears fell down her pale cheeks. She shed tears fiercely, but the corners of her mouth curled up. Yes, because I am you and you are me. How could I harm you? How I wish you a safe life, how I wish you were safe and sound. As she spoke, Suberong's voice became choked up. You feel it, right? You should be able to feel it. You don't like Miss Lu from the Genkuo Palace. You deliberately made me look embarrassed in front of Princess Wenan of the Genkuo Palace that day. You probably wanted me to stay away from the Genkuo Palace, but you must also have your selfish motives. Seeing her admitting, Lily's blood flowed all over her body even more rapidly. She told her guess. She thought Suberong would deny it, but she didn't expect her to nod with tears. Yes, you and I were originally there should be a heart-to-heart connection, and you should know clearly what I think. I did plot against you. I also have my own selfish motives, but shouldn't I? Suberong wiped her eyes with her sleeve, and she took off the winter sweet that was already hot in her hand and put it into Lily's bun. Insert it over. We will no longer talk secretly in front of Ming Gran. Lily let her move, staring straight at Suberong's red eyes, biting her lips. I had a fight with Suberong that day, and we both fell out together. After entering the lotus pond, I woke up with a splitting headache, as if someone was trying to pull me out. My mother said that Suberong was originally dead, but in the end she came back to life mysteriously. Who are you? Suberong smiled, her eyes red. I am you. You're talking nonsense. Lily's heart sank. She knew what Suberong said was true, but at this moment she instinctively retorted, you are not me. Why are you me? I am myself. I am you. Suberong also seemed to be cruel, wiped her face, narrowed her eyes, and showed a bit of cruelty. I am you, but it's a pity that my mother refuses to recognize me and only thinks that I am a monster. Possession is just taking over Suberong's body. After saying this, Suberong paused. Do you know why I plotted against you at the Genkuo Palace that day? Why did I keep you away from Lu Minjiao? As Suberong spoke, she began to recite softly, there is Su Mansion in the capital, and there are two flowers blooming side by side. It's a pity that because of my willfulness, when I was young, I was always competitive in everything. I love to compete with Suberong. She narrowed her eyes, and Lily held her breath without interrupting her. On the 12th day of the 12th year, my mother gave each of us a jade bracelet. She said it was my grandmother's dowry. It was passed down only to daughters and not to daughters-in-law. I wanted to. Suberong had the same idea as me. We two people started fighting next to the lotus pond. When Suberong said this, she laughed softly, with a sad expression. She and I both fell into the lotus pond, and when we woke up, I was the only one left, mother. Although she didn't blame me face to face, I knew that she was thinking of Suberong. I was unwilling at that time and always wanted to stand out. I wanted to show my mother that even if Suberong was alive, she might not have what I brought to the Su family. Much glory. I also went there when Lu Minjiao, the eldest daughter of Duke Liu's family, got her hairpin. I was plotted against, and people thought that I was having an affair with the Prince of Xiangyang. My legitimate daughter of Duke Yongl's palace, finally married to Xiangyang and became. I entered the side room in the palace. Suberong narrowed her eyes, as if remembering something from a long time ago. Lu Minjiao appears to be generous, but is actually mean. In the end, So, you died in her hands in the end. When Lily heard this, she still didn't understand something in her heart. So, you are indeed considered Lily Su. These words that Suberong admitted personally at this time have never appeared in the plot, including her marriage to the Prince of Xiangyang as a concubine. This should be something Suberong experienced in her previous life. She should be reborn. To be continued. P.S. Second update. I have been giving clues before, and the book review area has been popular these 2 days, but I can't spoil it. The reason will be revealed slowly in this chapter and the next chapter. I don't want everyone's anxiety to cause me to panic. In the end, Lu Shen Wuzhu, like in the past, I used continuous updates to get through the section, which eventually caused me to get stuck. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 357. Only in this way can we explain why Suberong's personality changed drastically after she woke up, why she understood Buddhist ethics, and why she seemed to have changed a person in an instant and seemed to have grown up overnight. Suberong's current life is the life that Suberong has experienced in the plot, not to mention that Behi also vaguely feels that what Suberong said is not a lie. When Suberong heard this, she seemed to become a little angry. She took several deep breaths. I am Lily Sue. You were originally Lily Sue. An inexplicable resentment surged out of Lily's heart, and she subconsciously said, you were originally Lily Sue, but Lily Sue in your life was already dead. Why do you want to come back again? You always want to make the decision for me. You always want to have everything in your hands. Have you ever thought that others also want to live their own lives? Lily did not control her body at this moment, but let it go. It was up to him to say everything the body wanted to say. You shouldn't have come back. As if she had been rejected by herself, Suberong turned pale for a moment. Why shouldn't I come back? I just don't want to go back to the same old path, so I'll help you. That's just what you think. Your so-called old path has always been you living. Have you ever thought that I don't want someone to live my life instead of me? Since you said you are me, you also know that my character is the most. You are so competitive that even Suberong and I fought endlessly. Why do you think I will accept you when you come back? As soon as these words were spoken, Lily's heart felt like a bright mirror. She had understood that this time the whole story of the mission. A big stone hanging in my heart fell to the ground. No wonder my memory is blurry after the age of 12. Because she has always represented the Lily Sue before she was 12 years old. After she was 12 years old, because the dead Lily Sue returned to her body, she swallowed up Lily Sue's original self before she was 12 years old. She disappeared before she was 12 years old, but she was not willing to do so, so she was born. A one-time mission. If she guessed correctly, the real plot should be that on Subeihi's 12th birthday, she and her sister Suberong had an endless fight, and they both fell into the lotus pond. Suberong died on the spot. Although Subeihi survived, she was tricked into marrying the crown prince of Xiangyang as a concubine. She lived an unhappy life. She probably died at the hands of Lu Minjiao, so she was reborn and returned to the world. When she fell into the water at the age of 12. When Lily Sue entered the mission that night, she felt an inexplicable severe pain in her head, as if someone was trying to force her out of her body. This was when Lily Sue was supposed to be reborn. The next scene Lily saw should be the scene after Su Lily was reborn. She did not marry the Prince of Xiangyang as a concubine like in her previous life, but instead married into the Zhenqiu Duke's mansion. Becoming Lu Yuanshao's head wife, she changed her destiny in her previous life, found a husband and gained everything she had never gotten in her previous life. Just because of her personality, Lily Sue had never suffered any blows or hardships before she was 12 years old, so she still had that intolerable personality. She should have had her own life. After Lily Sue died, she would come back to face her original self. At that time, the souls of both parties should have been independent individuals in a certain aspect. Lily Sue annexed her before she was 12 years old, and only then did Lily Sue become successful. But before she was 12 years old, Lily Sue was unwilling. She didn't want her life to be replaced by someone else. Even if the person who made the decision for her and lived for her was her many years later, she wouldn't care about it, just like she did back then. Competing with Suberong for something, no matter how bad it is, she doesn't care about it. Just like other people, she has to taste the hardship and fatigue by herself. But she didn't even have a chance to try, so everything was already done. The later self that has been experienced replaces it. I just don't want you to suffer. Suberong looked hurt. It felt uncomfortable to be rejected by self. She stammered and tried to explain, I told you before, I have no ill intentions towards you. My life, no matter good or bad, I hope that I can live it by myself, not someone to replace me, and I don't want anyone to help me, even if that person is myself. This echoed in my heart. In a word, Lily said this softly. Lily Sue in the plot didn't even have the chance to say such words. Even after rebirth, Lily Sue didn't even give her the right to choose. She also wanted to experience her life by herself. instead of being guided by people who have experienced life to guide you how to live. It's like adults always like to tell rebellious children that I'm doing it for your own good, so they stop the children from doing anything that the adults think will be harmful. But the child wants to experience it on his own, rather than someone else telling him whether it is good or not. The same person, but different ages. The target of this mission is herself, so Lily can't feel Suberong's malice towards her. Even though Suberong has done a lot to her, Lily can't hate her, and she can't like her either. She couldn't even guard against Suberong. After all, in a certain way, after Lily entered the mission, she was Lily Su, and Suberong was her. Who would defend herself? Even sometimes it was clear that Lily would doubt her, but subconsciously couldn't bear to doubt her. This strange feeling finally had an answer at this time. For you, you have experienced it, but for me, I have not experienced all this. It is just like having something beautiful, you have tried it, and you know it is poisonous, but have you ever thought about it? I am also. Do you want to try this thing to see if it's poisonous? Suberong really didn't hurt her. Maybe she just wanted to get back on track because she had gone through too many detours. It's just that God has nothing to do with a reborn girl like her. It was already a blessing to let her know how things would develop in the future and give her a chance to start over after she made a mistake. Unfortunately, in the plot, she did not give the person she swallowed up when she was 12 a chance to taste it. Although they are all the same person, after a long time, they have formed independent individuals. She has experienced one life and returned to her own body, so she can easily swallow up her 12-year-old self. But have you ever thought about it? Did she ever think about being swallowed up by her when she came back after death? Aren't they all us? Suberong's tone was a little dry. The palms of his hands clenched tightly into fists. It's all me. Why do you reject me? She was supposed to be back in her own body. But she was rejected by her original self, and in the end she could only wake up in the body of her sister Suberong. She lost the love of her parents, and her heart was always thinking about Lily, but she was not understood. Suberong felt that she was also full of grievances. Mom ignores me and only cares about you. We are supposed to be one. But you are very repulsive to me. You should be able to feel it. We are supposed to be the same person. Mom ignores you. I am very repulsive to you. That's because you already have a lot of things. People who can be reborn can see the true colors of some people in their previous lives, and can choose a life that is more beneficial to themselves. People who are reborn with so many benefits already available, why would you want more? What's more, although we are the same person, if I am the one who can make the decision. Instead of you, I can have your memory. I can make the decision. I don't need you to live in my place. I will annex you from now on. It's me who exists, not you, so are you willing? Lily's words were specious, but Suberong seemed to understand. After rebirth, if she was reborn in the 12-year-old Subehi, but if the dominant consciousness was not the 12-year-old Subehi, she would be annexed by her. Instead, she was annexed by Lily Su, who was before she was 12 years old. From then on, there is no Lily Su who survives to the later years in the world, but a 12-year-old Lily Su who foretells the fate of her death. Is Suberong willing? She asked herself. She didn't want to. Therefore, the reborn person is not willing. So Lily was living well before she was 12 years old, but was eventually swallowed up by others. Although she was the only one who occupied her body, she was still unwilling. Seeing that Suberong was silent, Lily took off the winter-sweet flowers on her head and held them in her hands to play with. Look, although we were once the same person, because of the different processes, we have different preferences and different personalities, we are two different people. I no longer like wintersweet. It was just the smell that you once liked. This does not represent me. In fact, I think it is too fragrant. What do you want to do for my good? It's something, so I don't appreciate it. Maybe we were the same person before, but time is changing, and we won't be the same person in the future. After saying this, Lily handed the Wintersweet in her hand back to Suberong's hand, and saw she looked a little lost. From now on, as long as you live your life well and don't worry about me, I don't need you to make the decision for me now, because you are no longer Lily Suo. After Lily said this, she said goodbye. Suberong turned her body sideways as if she was crying but not crying. The two passed by each other, and Lily could vaguely hear her saying in her ears, "Those who abandon me will not be able to stay the same as yesterday. Those who mess up my heart will not be able to stay today. I have so many worries every day. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?" Lily didn't know if she was wrong. After all, she shouldn't answer this question, but Lily Sue originally wanted to have her own life, but Lily understood. After thinking about this problem, the fog that had troubled her for a long time in the past naturally cleared away, and so Lily's original wish naturally came to her heart. Lily could strongly feel the original owner's thoughts at this moment. She wanted to be like an ordinary person. She wants to get married happily, she wants to get married and have children like ordinary people, and when she meets a husband she wants to grow old with him. To be continued. P.S. 2 updates today. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas. At this point, the mystery is revealed. The book review area has been very busy recently. Unfortunately, because I can't spoil it, I can't explain why Lily can't guard against Suberong. Because that's her. No one can guard against herself, so it's not that she is stupid. Her IQ is low just because Suberong is actually her, but she is said to be her in the future. Who would be prepared to take a stab at him suddenly one day? Impossible, so sometimes the harm we suffer is actually caused by ourselves. Nowadays, there may be children who don't like this writing style, but not every story can be the same. At least before the completion, I still want to write novels with different styles. Maybe this will lose some readers, but since I started writing this, the story is a kind of willfulness, so by the end I naturally cannot compromise with reality like I used to. I love those who support me as always. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 358. Such a wish was actually fulfilled for her by the reborn Subeihi in the plot. She and Lu Yuanshao had been in love for a lifetime. Lu Yuanshao only favored one person for her, and the other beautiful flowers and blessings were no longer in his eyes. The original owner felt dissatisfied simply because she was not the one who made these decisions, she was just represented by others, so she felt unwilling to do so and wanted to experience it herself. Lily figured this out and couldn't help but smile bitterly. If the original owner's wish was to get married and have children, how could she fulfill it without Li Yangzi's help? Could it be that after so many missions, the final result is still getting married in the plot? If so, how could she return to her original calm state of mind when she left the plot again? She would die if she could not complete the task, but she was a little unwilling to do so after completing the task. When she was 12 years old, Lily Su, who seemed so ordinary and just the wish of all the girls in the world, now stumped Lily, who had experienced a lot. Behind her, Suberong was still holding a string of blooming wintersweet flowers in her hand in despair, as if she was almost unsteady on her feet. Lily turned her head to take a look, then turned and left. After talking to Suberong this time, she felt as if she had put down a huge burden. She no longer had the weird feeling when she saw Suberong again, and naturally no longer had the doubts in the past. The original owner's wish was actually very simple, that is, she wanted to follow Suberong back to the bridge. Don't let her interfere with your life, and you also don't want to interfere with her life. Now that the former Subeihi has been reborn into Suberong, who should have died long ago, for the two of them that said, it's all the best ending. At this time, the table had been opened in front, and Lily returned to her seat and sat down. He turned his head and looked at her lovingly, Why have you been there for so long? Are you tired? Lily shook her head. Just about to speak. The old princess of Jingyang came late with the help of the girl and the mother-in-law. Princess Wenan and others stood up, each came forward and bowed. The curtain behind them was opened, and a tall and thin young man wearing a jade crown and purple robe came out. His face was like a crown jade, but his expression was a bit cold. He took off the cloak covered with sable fur and handed it to the girl next to him. As soon as he appeared, the house where the earth dragon was burning seemed to be hit by winter again in an instant. When Lily raised her head and glanced at this person, her brows suddenly wrinkled. He was the young man he saw and helped him that day at the Duke's mansion. Now he was standing behind the old Princess Jingyang. Judging from his attire, he should be the one who accompanied Princess Jingyang to the capital this time to meet the saint. King Yang. He must have noticed Lily's surprised gaze. He turned to look at Lily with a raised brow, and his ice-sculpted face suddenly showed signs of melting. He just quickly turned his head away. You don't have to be polite, just sit down, although she is known as the old princess of Jingyang. But in fact, it was just because Princess Jinjiang's husband died young. She was beautiful in her prime. Although she was wearing black velvet clothes, she did not look dull. Instead, she only showed her nobility. Wenan, who had always been arrogant, the princess couldn't help but come up to her at this time and joked with her, "My sister went to the fiefdom earlier. It's rare to see her again. This time we meet again, Jianli is already so old. This trip to the capital should be to ask for the emperor's help. Is it a marriage gift?" The old princess of Jingyang has an extraordinary background, and King Jingyang is the only king with a different surname in the Daqi dynasty in this plot. She supports her troops and respects herself, and her power is already very large. Although she is still under the control of Chao Yan in name, in fact she is under the control of the imperial court. The pressure on the Jingyang palace is no longer as strong as before. This king of Jingyang has not really appeared in the plot, but Subei has heard of his reputation, because this person is well known as a good person with Longyang in the Daqi dynasty, and he is in his early 20s, an age that ordinary people should have gotten married and had children long ago, but he has been putting it off until now. Because of this, the imperial court was naturally happy to see such a situation and treated Prince Jingyang with great courtesy. Even Princess Wenan, who had always been proud, couldn't help but bend down to make friends with the old princess of Jingyang when she saw her. "I do have this plan." The old Princess Jingyang pursed her lips and smiled, her face a little gloomy. Princess Wenan was not discouraged after such a bad experience. After thinking about it, she suddenly turned her head and pointed at the He family and her daughter. There are very few girls in Beijing who are the same age as Jianli. However, Miss Su, the second daughter of Yongle Marquis, is not married yet. Yongle Marquis likes to hide his granddaughter from others. Take a look, sister. If you like it, you can ask the emperor for an edict. Hearing this, he was so angry that she trembled all over. Lily was stunned for a moment. When she saw King Jingyang again, she saw him squinting his eyes, his fair and handsome face was expressionless, and his long black hair was decorated with jade. The crown is tied up, and the expression is as lazy as a dormant cheetah. "Where is Miss Su from Yongle Haofu?" After hearing this, Princess Jinjiang's eyes suddenly changed. She had been leaning crookedly on the throne, but now her expression became clear, and she began to arouse. When Lily came, his chest couldn't help rising and falling. She was about to speak, but Lily shook his trembling hand and stood up. In full view of everyone, Princess Jingyang glanced at Lily, and suddenly she pursed her lips and smiled. When she took off the bracelet on her wrist and didn't allow Lily to say anything, he put it directly on her hand. His face turned pale in an instant, and she didn't know what to do next. Suberong, who came back with her eyes still a little red, looked at all this and opened her mouth in surprise, but no one noticed the strangeness of Suberong at this moment. On the way back, he hugged Lily and cried, "This prince of Jingyang is famous for being a remote person with broken sleeves. Who in the whole country knows this? My poor daughter, you were almost killed by a lonely soul." When Mr. He said this, he seemed to have come back to his senses, and immediately stopped talking. But Lily could tell from this sentence that Mr. He should have suspected Suberong's identity for a long time. After losing a daughter, the He family must have thought that Suberong was some kind of monster, and was very wary of her. He hated not knowing which monster had taken over his daughter's body, but was also afraid that she would use magic to harm everyone in the Su family. Although she could not bear to kill Suberong because of these fears, but she felt very complicated when she saw Suberong. After being reborn, He thought that she had lost the love of her parents, but she never thought that she was suffering like her, so she had to give up all the love is given to the younger daughter. After thinking about this, Lily felt a little sad for no reason. To be honest, King Jingyang is as good as Long Yang. It doesn't matter whether you like men or not women. If this is really the case, then this is the best thing for her. After all, no matter how much he loves her, it is impossible for her to stay unmarried for the rest of her life. Lily comforted he a few words, and then issued an imperial edict, and indeed Princess Jingyang entered the palace. Asked for this marriage. Since both parties are very young, the marriage was naturally arranged quickly. Princess Jingyang was probably afraid that the Su family would regret it, so the betrothal gift she gave her was even more than when Princess Wenan proposed to marry Suberong for her grandson. He was worried that her daughter might have to be a widow throughout her life, so she had to give her more in addition to money. To compensate, Shili Hongjuan caused a sensation in almost the entire capital. This is Lily's first ancient wedding in many missions. I wonder if it is because King Jingyang Lu Jianli only likes men but not women, so she is not particularly nervous, but feels a little novel this time. For some special weddings, Lily practiced the 9 Yang Sutra until she was sent back to the bridal chamber after the ceremony. Although his internal strength is not deep, he is not too tired at the moment. Lu Jianli, who was wearing a fiery red wedding robe, took the scale and lifted the hijab for her. The two looked at each other, and Lu Jianli's eyes quickly flashed with a hint of embarrassment. Maybe it was because of the reflection in the wedding robe, but Lily could vaguely see that his ears and neck seemed to be a little red. When he went out to toast, a group of women stayed to talk to Lily, the bride. Suberong was also among this group of people. They hadn't seen each other for several months. She should have figured out a lot after Lily talked to her. Now her cheeks looked plumper and her eyes were brighter than before. She was sitting among a group of women, looking restless. It was late at night and when everyone was leaving with an excuse, Suberong ignored the urging of the nuns around her and forcibly stayed. She walked to the door and looked at Chun Xiao and others again, and said without thinking, "Do you really want to marry Prince Jingyang for the rest of your life? My life should have been decided by me, but now this is actually the best. You have your life, you have found your right husband, and you are now Suberong, why do you still worry about me?" Lily changed. She put on her wedding clothes and removed the complicated hairpin ring on her head. Although her face was exactly the same as Suberong's, due to the completely different temperaments of the two, it was no longer like when people couldn't tell who was who when they were young. Suberong glanced at her and was speechless. She herself was 12 years old, so she naturally understood the meaning of Lily's words. She bit her lip, snorted, stood up with a smile, "I understand, but I still don't understand. I just can't let it go. I hope you won't blame me again in the future. I just want you to have a good life, although I have some selfish motives." She wanted to find happiness for herself. Although she kept saying that she wanted it for her former self, she was still selfish when choosing marriage. It can be seen from her behavior when she got Lu Yuanxiao that although it is Lily Su many years later, and the other is the Lily Su of the past, but due to time, two different individuals have formed. This ending may be the best. Subarong turned around and went out. It was only then that she accepted the fact that she was no longer Subehi. She had done so many things in the past, but she just wanted to stubbornly live a good life, as if she had fulfilled her wish. She didn't know at this moment did she figure it out. Lily chuckled and watched her go out, then ate a few half-cooked dumplings with chopsticks, and let the girls wait on her. After washing herself, she did not wait for Lu Jianli to come. She couldn't hold on and fell asleep until her hair was dry. She seemed to have slept very deeply this time, and her head seemed to be extremely dizzy. Her eyelids were so tight that she could not open them. It was like a huge mountain was pressing down on her body, making it impossible for her to move. To be continued. P.S. Second update: the story should be finished in the next chapter, maybe. Apocalypse of Daobi's Cultivation of Immortality, ISBN 333-5536. Introduction. In fact, this is a funny article that attracted a large group of funny people to make fun of each other. A few words. I saw someone saying that since Lily Su didn't want her future self to replace her, why did she still ask Lily to help complete the task? Answer: what she wants is a chance to speak, not to die without being able to speak. Later, Lily Su did not give her a chance to choose, but made the choice for her, hoping not to explain this issue again. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 359. No, a cold voice seemed to be saying something, and then another somewhat sinister voice said, "Get her." She didn't know which one the two of them were talking about, and Lily couldn't help but want to laugh. Lu Jianli was a good person like Long Yang in the plot. In Lily Su's plot, he never married a concubine, but it was said that he had a concubine with her. A mysterious man had a very secretive life and had no heirs in his life, so Lily did not worry about what he would do to her at the moment. No, the cold voice refused again, but the sinister laughter rang out, making people feel a little creepy and a little desolate at the same time. I have been waiting for a long time, and I am already a little impatient. You should also want to go back, right? I guess the key to going back lies with her. Don't forget, now that you have jumped down, why are you still thinking about going back without being stained by the dust? Later, the arguing could still be vaguely heard, but Lily couldn't hear it clearly. A somewhat cold hand touched Lily's cheek, making her shiver from the cold. She wanted to open her eyes, but her eyelids weighed more than 1,000 pounds at this time. The hand slid down her face and landed on her waist, and got in along the hem of the clothes. After a while, the soft and wet lips came over and moved gently on her face. The movements were a little jerky at first, and then the movements gradually became heavier. Lily wanted to hide, but her body she was soft but had no strength. Fortunately, Lu Jianli only liked men and not women. She comforted herself in her heart, but she only felt that her body was getting colder and colder. As the clothes slowly faded, a body pressed against her body. "Come over." The originally chaotic thoughts were followed by a sharp pain. Lily suddenly woke up. She bit her lip. His eyes, which he felt unable to open just now, suddenly widened. Lu Jianli's cold face seemed to be dyed with a layer of crimson flames. There was an indescribable emotion in his eyes, and his head was covered with black silk satin. The hair-like hair fell down from both sides of his face and blocked the side of Lily's face, forming a small space where the two looked at each other. Maybe he suddenly woke up when he saw Lily. For a moment, Lu Jianli could clearly see the panic in Lily's eyes. He seemed to be a little panicked and reached out to cover Lily's eyes. At first, his lips moved awkwardly on Lily's cheek, and finally fell on her. On the lips. I didn't expect that a man who likes men would touch women at the same time. When he opened his eyes, his expression was still a little dazed. The clothes beside her were already empty. She was wearing yesterday's clothes in a mess, but the knot around her waist was tied haphazardly. It was obvious that the person who tied the knot was not familiar with doing such a thing, so she looked a bit messy. It was quiet all around, and no one came to call her in the morning. "I don't know what time it is now. Is the princess awake?" Just as there was some movement inside, there was a sound outside. Lily was feeling a little panicked when the door creaked open and a woman with a bun came in. When she saw Lily's pale face, she paused for a moment and bowed to Lily. The old princess was afraid that the slaves would disturb the princess to rest. "She is fine now, but why are she crying?" Lily wiped her face, and then realized that her hands were shaking. She took a deep breath, forced herself to calm down, and waved her hands pretending to be calm. The woman comforted her for a while, and saw that Lily looked gloomy. He didn't look very talkative and hurried out again. Not long after, Lu Jianli came in wearing a purple singlet with a sloping collar and his hair not yet tied up. His cold expression seemed a bit cold. Lily still looked flustered. Although her expression was barely calm, her lips were pursed tightly and the corners of her lips were trembling slightly. "What's wrong?" Lu Jianli glanced at Lily and sat down silently. It was a cold day, and there were even scattered snowflakes outside. He was wearing single clothes, but his body did not feel cold. The slanted collar of his clothes below, you can vaguely see the delicate collarbones and looming chest. The waist is only easily hooked by the waist, showing the long legs and slender waist, which makes the man's flat curve look a bit enchanting. A few strands of long black hair hung down from his jade-like face, somewhat softening his originally cold appearance. When he saw Lily ignoring him, Lu Jianli showed a wry smile at the corner of his mouth and sat towards Lily. He went over and pulled her into his arms, including the quilt. "I'm sorry," he murmured softly, not knowing whether he was apologizing for yesterday's behavior or for something else. A strange idea flashed through her mind, but before Lily could catch it, she felt it was too funny and subconsciously rejected the idea. Lu Jianli stared at Lily with a complicated expression. He didn't want to hurt her, but he was helpless. He has stayed in these worlds for too long. Although he has recovered some things, he has lost more. He can understand Lily's mood at this moment. He even went through several missions in order to maintain the original regarding her promise not to have any intimate relationships with people in the mission plot. He even helped her in several missions. However, Li Yangzi never dreamed that in the end he would have to destroy this promise with his own hands and put her hopes away. The one who broke it turned out to be himself. Thinking of this, Li Yangzi, who had now become Lu Jianli, couldn't help but smile bitterly. He came from a race that did not belong to these low-end dimensions. He was born with outstanding talents. When he was young and vigorous, due to his extraordinary strength, he got into great trouble, and was finally sealed by a group of old guys at the cost of their lives. It's just that his strength was no longer what those people could seal. Perhaps he was tired of living without a goal, so he allowed those people to separate his 7 emotions and seal them separately, leaving only the name. The subject is called Li Yangzi. When he woke up after an unknown number of years, Li Yangzi's soul power had been greatly damaged by the seal for many years. His strength was not as good as 1/10 of what it was in its heyday. He used his little remaining power to create 3,000 worlds. Including many small worlds, looking for people who can do things for him, entering these worlds, and bringing back to him the power that can warm his wounds. When an ordinary girl named Lily entered his domain, he actually didn't pay much attention to her at first. In addition to feeling that she was more knowledgeable than others and would not bore him or make him angry, she even made him feel very comfortable. This is not a very beautiful girl, but after living for so many years, Li Yangzi doesn't care about the beauty and ugliness of her appearance. After seeing too many men and women who were called into the mission after death, she greedily wants her as soon as she comes. After getting many benefits, this kind of person who knows the current situation and knows the rules will make him feel satisfied. He paid too much attention to this girl, and even Li Yangzi knew that this was not a good sign. He made many exceptions for Lily, and he would even help her when she entered a mission and did not want to get emotionally entangled with the mission target, until she met one of his 7 emotions. Many years later, the Chi-Ching who were separated at the time had already developed their own independent thoughts, and one of them even frightened Lily. In order to solve the trouble of that mission for her, Li Yangzi entered the mission and joined forces with one of the Chi-Ching. To become one. At the wrong time and when the time was not ripe, he acted too recklessly, and in the end he was trapped in the task. However, the emotion that had already had independent consciousness refused to be erased for some unknown reason. Consciousness exists with him. In several missions, Li Yangzi had always kept his promise to protect her from getting close to the characters in the plot. He even stayed by Lily's side in different identities in several previous missions, but he did not expect that one of the 7 emotions would have such a great impact on him, and the most important thing is that he himself did not expect that he was trapped in these 3,000 worlds he created for help, and now he wants to leave this world, and it turns out that only in that way can we escape. You've done it all, why are you pretending? An angry voice rang in his mind. Li Yangzi could almost imagine the gloomy look on his other self at this moment. He squinted his eyes, and that voice came out a bit sad and helpless. I tried so hard to get it, but you can get it so easily, just because I wasn't born to exist. Li Yangzi didn't make a sound. He just listened quietly to the sinister voice in his mind that was sneering. After a while, his eyes became cold and the angry voice in his mind slowly became quiet again. The cold expression on Lu Jianli's face returned to Lu Jianli's somewhat uncomfortable look. Lu Jianli just gently held Lily in his arms, and his eyes fell on her somewhat unfamiliar face, as if through this appearance, I saw the hurried and somewhat disappointed face. Lily originally thought that she and Lu Jianli would become a real couple in the plot this time, but unexpectedly, except for the wedding night, he never touched her again. The smile Princess Jingyang showed to her at first changed. She became indifferent. Before the people from the Jingyang Palace left the capital, Su Beirong came to see her once. It seemed that she had let go of her heart. Now she and Lu Yuanshao are living very well. She is still a little worried about Lily, but she is not like with such obsession before. She just hoped that Lily could live well. After giving up her former identity as Lily Su Beirong became much calmer now, as if they had met as real sisters and wanted to be together. When he said something else, he found that he couldn't say anything. Before leaving the capital with the Prince of Jingyang, Lily went to see the He family. Because she married into the Lu family of the Prince of Jingyang, the status of the Su family has naturally increased. This should be in line with the wishes of the original owner when he was 12 years old. Lily put in a lot of effort in this mission. If she couldn't complete it, she should have completed it. But when she thought about what she had lost, it felt like a piece was missing in her heart, and she couldn't make it up in any way. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 360. I don't know if it was because Lily's soul wanted to be reborn into the body. Lily didn't live too long this time. When she returned to the starry sky, she was sure that her mission was completed. She originally thought that she was still alive this time. When facing the cold starry sky and the cold attribute values appearing, the voice of Li Yangzi, who had disappeared for a long time, rang out. Congratulations, the mission is completed. This originally cold voice sounded very exciting at this time. Lily was stunned for a while and didn't even react. She watched helplessly as the handsome figure in brocade robes and jade crown slowly emerged in front of her, holding back the tears for a long time. It flowed out all of a sudden. Where have you been? During these days when Li Yangzi disappeared, she experienced a lot of things, but they were all pushed to the deepest part of her heart. The accident on this mission became the trigger for her depression. Goodbye Li Yangzi. At this moment, an inexplicable feeling of discomfort and grievance emerged. A complex look flashed through Li Yangzi's eyes. He was no longer in his original innocent state of mind and appearance. When he saw Lily's expression, he felt guilty for a moment. In fact, he was always by Lily's side during missions. Tang En, Qin Gong, and even Lin Tianjiao and Luo Cheng in the game, he was always there, but he couldn't say it out loud. He was silent, and Lily bit her fingers, subconsciously not wanting to tell him that she had a close relationship with the characters in the plot this time. She instinctively felt guilty and scared, but at the same time she felt aggrieved and angry for no reason. As if they had been betrayed by the whole world together, and now they want to come back with severe revenge. I'm back. Li Yangzi saw her uneasy expression and waved to her. Lily walked towards him numbly. A slender hand caressed the middle of her head. Lily felt relieved, relaxed her body and leaned into his arms. Just lean on him for a while, let me lean on him for a while. There are other missionaries in the mission. Although she has experienced so many missions, she is still a human being at heart. She will be stressed and tired. There will also be a day when she feels tired and scared. It's just that she had suppressed all of this in her heart before. In fact, Lily felt that she was very tired when she entered Rongli's world again, but the starry sky without Li Yangzi did not give her room to relax, and she put everything into her heart. All the negative emotions were suppressed in my heart. It's okay. Li Yangzi, who had always been cold, nodded slightly and reached out to touch her hair. You did a good job. Lily shook her head, but her eyes only felt a little sour. She subconsciously reached out and grabbed Li Yangzi's waist. After not seeing each other for a long time, his body seemed to be more solid than before. There seems to be something more in my body that I didn't have before, but what is it? Lily was a little speechless again. In the past, Li Yangzi gave her an unpredictable feeling, as if he was nothingness, but now he seemed to really exist in front of her. What's even weirder is that when she leaned into his arms, she felt a very familiar feeling, as if she had done this many times, but in fact it was clearly the only time she was closest to Li Yangzi. Thank you. Lily leaned for a while and wanted to stand up straight. She was actually just a little tired and just wanted to find someone to talk to. Once she calmed down, she returned to her usual rationality. I actually felt a little embarrassed for my behavior just now. Li Yangzi reached out and touched her face. Although he had touched his head in the past, this was the first time he touched her face so intimately. When Lily was stunned for a moment, his hand stayed on Lily's face for a moment. Then he took it back as if nothing had happened. As he waved his hand, Lily's information in the starry sky reappeared. Gender, female, variable. Name, Lily. Age, 21. Intelligence, 79, out of 100. Appearance, 82, out of 100. Physical strength, 71, 100 full points. Force, 45, out of 100 points. Spirit, 59, out of 100 points. Reputation, 33, out of 100 points. Skills, 9 Yang Manual, 9 Yin Manual, Heaven and Earth Gate Tao Te Ching, Southern Gu Technique, Star Body Training Technique. Specialties, Intermediate Cooking Skills, Advanced Acting Skills, 5 Elements and Bagua, Slight Dabbling. Charisma, 55, out of 100. Collection, Corpse King's Love, Saint's Blessing, Angel's Heart, Dragon King's Promise, Fox's Charm, Mother's Love Like a Mountain, The Uncrowned King, The Way of the Sword. Lily Su originally thought that her mission this time was not difficult. After all, apart from being a little confused at the beginning because she did not know the mission goal, in fact, Lily Su's original wish was not excessive, and she did not ask herself to be reborn after many years. The other one was wiped out by himself, just because he wanted to go back to the road with her. He thought that his attribute values should not be increased this time. Lily could tell from the last mission, the more later, as her attribute values increased, she could no longer increase her attribute values as much as before, but she did not expect that her attributes would increase so much this time. Why did I add so many extra points to this mission? Lily couldn't help but ask. As soon as she finished speaking, she thought about Lu Jianli again. She was afraid that Li Yangzi would know about it, so she murmured to shut up. He dared to mention it again, but he didn't notice the awkward and stiff look on Li Yangzi's face after she asked this question. He even unnaturally put his arms behind his back. Although he looked calm, his eyes were still flashing very quickly. After a strange moment, he didn't answer. Lily felt a little inexplicably guilty at the moment. She regretted what she said after asking. Seeing that Li Yangzi didn't say anything, she felt relieved and didn't think of anything else. She also didn't realize that Li Yangzi didn't show surprise at her collection. Instead, he seemed to have already known about it, and stood awkwardly for a while. When there was no starry sky with Li Yangzi, she always hoped that someone would hurry up. She came back so that she could rest for a while, but when Li Yangzi actually came back, she felt inexplicably uncomfortable, so she offered to do a task. When Lily disappeared into the starry sky, Li Yangzi sighed and spread out his palms. A transparent light group in his palms quickly grew in size, and finally turned into a blurry figure. He seemed to be wearing a straight military uniform, and his lower body was wrapped wearing a pair of military uniform boots under his long legs in military trousers. Ye Changjin looked at the direction where Lily had just disappeared with a cold expression, and then sneered, his expression a little grim. I just want to try my best one last time. If it doesn't belong to me and I can't get it, maybe me and you becoming one will be the best ending for me. The obsession has become true, knowing that the possible outcome is that he disappears, but he wants to have her, even in this incomplete way, he must get it. After saying this, there was only a sigh left in the starry sky, and then no one could be seen anymore. When Lily woke up again, she opened her eyes in a very exquisite and gorgeous room, but full of girlish atmosphere. She was lying on the big, soft bed, and the post-winter sunlight filtered in through the goose-yellow curtains in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, giving the room a soft halo. She stretched subconsciously, and the relaxed atmosphere made her relax involuntarily for a moment. While there was no one around, she began to take in the plot in her mind. This time, her name in the mission was Tang Bei. She vaguely remembered that her last name was Tang, but it was not surprising that the mission had overlapping surnames, so Lily did not take her last name to heart. Tang Bei's parents divorced when she was young, and her father married another woman when she was 15 years old. The relationship between her and her stepmother was not very harmonious, and she wanted to drive her stepmother out of the house, but she never succeeded. The bad relationship between Tang Bei and her father gradually began to have some headaches about the family. It was not until Tang Bei was 20 years old that her stepmother died mysteriously. When someone pointed out that the matter was related to her, the stepmother might be she was killed, and when the police station was about to arrest her and bring her to justice, Tang's father stood up and admitted the crime of killing his wife. He was taken away by the police. Tang Lily originally thought that Tang's father had killed her stepmother. It was true, but in the following years, suspicions surfaced one after another, and she discovered that her stepmother might not have been killed by her father. Father Tang said that at the beginning just to save her. It's a pity that her father was sentenced for murder a few years ago and died in prison a few years ago. Because of her repeated struggles with her stepmother, Tang's father suffered from depression early on. The more Lily thought about it, the more she regretted it. She also died in depression. Her last wish before her death was to change her life from the moment her stepmother came into the house. She didn't want to fall out with her stepmother anymore, which would make her father haggard mentally and physically. She also wanted to be better. It would be nice to see who killed the stepmother this time, so that Father Tang would no longer take the blame for himself. After receiving the plot, Lily rubbed her swollen head and felt a little dazed. She originally thought that the mission would be more difficult each time. Unexpectedly, this time the mission turned out to be easier than she expected. In addition to wanting to get rid of it is a little difficult to be suspected of killing his stepmother. If he doesn't argue with his stepmother, it is not a big problem at all. Could it be that because Li Yangzi returned to the starry sky and cried to him, this mission was particularly simple? The doubts in her heart flashed away, but there was a knock on the door outside. "Ziahe, are you awake? Can Daddy come in?" Father Tang's cautious voice sounded. With a bit of flattery, Lily felt as soon as I felt sour, I subconsciously shouted, "Come in." The door was opened all of a sudden. Father Tang, who was wearing casual clothes and holding a tray in his hand, changed his shoes and entered the room first. When he saw his daughter sitting on the bed, he leaned over with an awkward expression. "Ziahe, Dad knows that you don't like Aunt Ye, but Aunt Ye has been following Dad for many years without any name or status. Dad has to give her an explanation." To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 361. Tang's father was doing business outside all year round. Yerume was his assistant at the beginning and stayed with him for 10 years. Tang Beihi's mother couldn't bear the presence of other women around her husband, so she left her husband 7 years ago in anger. She divorced Tang's father years ago. Tang Beihi believed that the matter had something to do with Yerume, so even after Yerume moved into the Tang family a few years ago, she had always been very targeted towards her and disliked her. But recently Yerume was pregnant, so Tang's father thought of giving her a title. The two had been together for more than 10 years, and now they had a child. Logically speaking, marriage should be a matter of course, but Tang Beihi didn't expect that. There was strong opposition to this matter. Father Tang originally thought that she had accepted this fact. It was not until his daughter went on a hunger strike recently that he realized that her daughter seemed to have compromised her relationship with Yerume on the surface, but she did not fully accept Yerume in her heart. The time when Lily arrived happened to be when the two were getting married. In the original plot, Tang Lily regretted that the quarrel was so fierce that her father was caught in the middle. Tang Lily was blindly opposed at first, and her relationship with Tang's father was somewhat strained. There was a stalemate until Yerume's child was not saved, and the relationship between father and daughter fell to a freezing point. Tang Lily herself was a little hostile to Yerume. After Yerume's child was not saved, she was also a little guilty, but Tang's father felt guilty for Yerume. The reason is that he slapped her for the first time in her life. It was the slap in the plot that caused the final fight between Tang Lily and Yerume to continue until Yerume died. Even though Tang Lily himself did not kill her, everyone did. She thought she killed him, just like the child Yerume lost, everyone knew it was related to Tang Lily. Tang's father finally surrendered in order to save his daughter's life. Finally committed suicide in prison. "Dad, I have figured it out. Aunt Ye has been with you for so many years and you have feelings for her. It was my fault in the past. I shouldn't stop you. It's okay for her to have children. I won't care about it in the future. Anyway, Tang Lily's wish is to let Tang's father live the rest of his life peacefully, so Lily is not prepared to get involved with Yerume as unclearly as in the plot. In fact, if it wasn't for the purpose of finding out why Yerume died mysteriously later, Lily wouldn't want to stay in this home at all. Tang's father obviously didn't expect that she would change her attitude so quickly. He was a little surprised and a little happy for a while. He sat with Lily for a while and then left with a relaxed look on his face. Now that he decided to get along well with Yerume, Father Tang naturally changed his previous habit of eating with Lily. In the Tang family, Father Tang usually accompanied Yerume to eat first, and then after Yerume finished eating, he would carry the food back to the room for Lily. Father Tang has been carefully sandwiched between Yarume and Tang Lily, but now his daughter suddenly decided to take a step back. Tang's father was naturally happy and called his daughter out to have dinner together that day. Yarume is 35 years old this year. She was the same age as Father Tang, but due to proper maintenance, she now looked like a mature woman in her 20s. When she saw Lily following Father Tang out to eat together, she was about to show off. The hands holding the bowl and chopsticks suddenly became stiff, and then he smiled nonchalantly. Is Zaya finally willing to eat with Mom? She had always called herself mother to Tang Bei, and had always expressed her willingness to be Lily's mother in front of Father Tang. However, it was precisely because of her attitude of calling herself mother in the past that Tang Lily became more and more disgusted with her, until in the end, the two were incompatible with each other. After knowing that Yarume was pregnant, Tang Bei accidentally pushed her to the ground during a quarrel with Yarume, and the child she had been pregnant with for 2 months was gone. If Tang Bei had heard such words in the past, she would definitely have been furious, and she would have quarreled with Yarume without saying a word. But at this time, Lily was not as stupid as the original owner. She just curled her lips with a willful look on her face. The color comes from. Aunt, yeah, I call you aunt for my father's sake. I have a mother myself, and I don't lack maternal love. You should leave it to the child in your belly to call you mother in the future. Father Tang was originally afraid that Lily would jump up again after hearing Yarume's words. Now he saw that she did not get angry. He breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly greeted Yarume to start serving rice. Yarume's cheek muscles twitched and she soon returned to calmness. In the past, the relationship between Tang Lily and Yarume was not very good, and there were constant conflicts between the two. However, in fact, Tang Lily in the plot did not know Yarume very well, but after Lily entered this mission, she began to embrace the idea of going with Yarume. Yarume got along well with her, which made Tang's father satisfied and no longer despaired about family life like in the plot. However, as time went by, she suddenly discovered that Yarume was not a fuel-efficient lamp. On the surface, it seems that Yarume is cold-blooded to Lily, but he usually greets her more than he really cares about her. However, I wonder if it is because Father Tang is a man and is naturally careless, so he does not notice this. Not at all, but on the contrary, he felt very satisfied when he saw his wife and daughter getting along happily recently, and he always had a smile on his face when he came home recently. This situation lasted until 2 months later, when Yarume's belly had swelled slightly. Tang's father began to feel relieved about the family and put all his thoughts on business. Tang Bei's body was just 15 years old. She was in her 3rd year of junior high school when she was taking the high school entrance examination. She had a heavy workload every day. She had just finished her evening self-study at 8:30 when Tang's father called and said that there was a temporary problem with business. Something happened and he couldn't get over it for the time being. He had asked Yarume to pick her up and asked Lily to wait for a while. After standing at the school gate for nearly half an hour, seeing that the last school bus at 9 o'clock was about to leave, and Yarume's shadow hadn't been seen yet, Lily got on the school bus directly. The relationship between her and Yarume was not as good as Tang's. Her father had relaxed a lot as he had imagined. When they were in front of Tang's father, the two of them pretended to be close to each other. Once they were out of Tang's father's presence, they would always say goodbye when they saw her. Yarume didn't like her, and even seemed to be very fond of her. Hate her. The school bus drove to a bus stop about 500 meters away from Lily's home. It was just the beginning of the night. The signs of the surrounding shopping malls and hotels were flashing colorful neon lights, and a small car beside the road. As the car passed by, Lily subconsciously stepped aside. From the corner of her eye, she used the car's lights to see a familiar car parked on the opposite road. The two figures seemed to be entangled in something at the moment. With his back to Lily was a tall and slender man, and leaning against the car with a proud smile on his face was Yarume, whom Father Tang said should pick her up at school. The man with his back to Lily didn't turn his head, and his face couldn't be seen. He was wearing a water-blasted denim jacket on his upper body and light blue jeans on his lower body. He didn't know what he was saying to Yarume, but Lily just stood there. After a while, the man suddenly turned his head as if he felt something. Even though he was standing under the neon lights, the man's face was blurry in the night, and he could vaguely tell that he was a very young man. He looked at Lily for a long time, and then suddenly grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. It gave off a somewhat sinister and ferocious feeling under the moonlight, which startled Lily. Yarume obviously saw Lily because of the man's turning head. She didn't know what she said to the man, so she hurriedly jumped into the car. When Lily just returned home, Yarume also followed back. This time she no longer pretended to be amiable as before. Instead, she squinted at Lily and sneered, "Zaihi, what did you just see?" But no matter what you saw, it was not what you imagined. She stroked the hair hanging down by her cheeks, and there was a hint of threat in her tone. "You have grown up now. Don't worry about the things between me and your father. If you still want your father to be in a happy mood." Lily put down her schoolbag on her own, and Yarume frowned. "Did you hear that? I don't want to interfere with your affairs, but you'd better not do anything to disgrace my father." Tangbei didn't know many things in the plot. She didn't know what Yarume's life was like. The original owner just kept regretting that she shouldn't have lost Yarume's child during the fight with Yarume. In the end, she even regretted that she didn't. She should have been quarreling with Yarume so much that after Yarume died, everyone suspected that she was the real murderer. Even Father Tang thought the same way. This time, Lily discovered that there seemed to be some unclear relationship between Yarume and other men. The man whose appearance could not be seen clearly just now was clearly not a kind person. When he turned his head and smiled at Lily, Lily's back was filled with pain for no reason. There was a layer of coldness, as if there was murderous intent in her smile. If Yarume interacted with such a person, she might die at the hands of this person. It was related to Tang Lily's wish in the plot, and Lily could not ignore it. Yarume raised her eyebrows when she heard what she said, and a hint of anger flashed across her face. In the next period of time, the family returned to the same situation as it had been a few months ago. However, Tangbei had been acting petty in the past and refused to get along with Yarume. This time, Yarume began to use her temper to target Lily. Lily heard her discussing with Tang's father more than once to temporarily send her to Tang Lily's mother's home. I have seen Lily staring at my belly several times, and her look made me a little scared. Brother Tang, please send her away temporarily, and then take her back after our child is born, okay?" On the weekend morning, as soon as Lily got up and brushed her teeth, she heard Yarume crying softly in the kitchen. "It took a lot of effort for me to have such a child. I really don't want anything to happen to him. Lily used to. He doesn't like me like that, but he suddenly became close to me recently, and I started to feel scared." To be continued.